I won the lottery, $5 million. But when I went to claim it, something terrible happened. That morning, I woke up like any other day. It was Tuesday, the sun was coming through my window. I made my tea, read the newspaper, and then decided to go to the neighborhood market. There was a long line at the lottery stand. I almost didn't buy the ticket, but I chose my grandchildren's numbers. That night, I watched the drawing. When they called my numbers, 5 million! I cried with joy. I called my whole family. Everyone came home. We celebrated, planning what we'd do with the money. The next morning, I went to the bank with my winning ticket. I was nervous, but also scared. When I arrived at the bank, there was a huge line. Everyone had tickets. Something wasn't right. The employee looked at me with pity and said, "There was an error. Thousands of winning tickets were printed." Thousands won the same prize. Instead of 5 million, only $500.
To know this story, then stay until the end. You'll be amazed.
To know this story, then stay until the end. You'll be amazed.
My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm 75 years old, and this is the most incredible story I never thought I would live. Some say it's impossible, others that it's a lie, but I'm here to tell you every detail of how a simple old woman like me achieved something that no one believed possible. It all started on a Tuesday morning. I remember it was March 15th because I had marked my grandson Carlos's medical appointment on my calendar. The sun was timidly coming through the window of my small kitchen while I prepared my chamomile tea like every morning. The routine was always the same. Wake up at 6, prepare breakfast, read the local newspaper, and then go out to the market. I lived alone in a modest little house on the outskirts of San Jose. My husband, Roberto, had passed away 5 years earlier, and since then my days went by in quiet monotony. My 3 children already had their own families, and although they visited me regularly, most of the time it was just me and my memories. That morning, while flipping through the newspaper, a small news item caught my attention. Special National Lottery drawing, accumulated prize of 50 million pesos. I smiled to myself. I had never been a gambling person, but something about that figure seemed appealing to me. 50 million. It was more money than I had seen in my entire life. I finished my breakfast of toasted bread with homemade strawberry jam and headed to the market like every Tuesday. The morning air was fresh, and the streets were still relatively empty. I greeted Doña Carmen, my lifelong neighbor, who was watering her plants in the front garden. "Good morning, Elena. How are you feeling today?" she asked with her usual smile. "Fine, Carmen, thank you. Just going for some vegetables at the market," I replied while adjusting my shopping bag. The San Rafael market was only 6 blocks from my house. It was a small but cozy place where I knew almost all the vendors. First, I went to Don Miguel's stand to buy tomatoes and onions, then to the Gonzalez family butcher shop for some chicken for dinner. It was when leaving the butcher shop that I saw the line. A line of at least 20 people extended from the small lottery stand that was on the corner of the market. I had never seen so many people there. Usually there were only 2 or 3 occasional customers buying numbers for the weekly drawing. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached to see what was happening. "What's going on here?" I asked a lady who was at the end of the line. "Today's special drawing, ma'am, 50 million pesos. Everyone wants to try their luck," she explained with obvious excitement in her voice. 50 million, the same number I had read in the newspaper that morning. For some reason that I still can't fully explain, I decided to stay in line. Maybe it was intuition, maybe simple curiosity, or maybe destiny had other plans for me. The fact is that there I was, a 75-year-old woman waiting to buy her first lottery ticket. The line moved slowly. I listened to the conversations of people around me. A young man talked about paying off his university debts. A mother dreamed of buying a bigger house for her children. An older man mentioned that he wanted to travel through Europe with his wife. Everyone had dreams. Everyone had plans for that money that, statistically, none of us was going to win. When I finally reached the counter, the vendor, an older man named Ricardo, whom I knew by sight, smiled at me surprised. Doña Elena, I had never seen you here before. Are you going to try your luck with this special drawing? Yes, Ricardo, I think so, I replied, still not being completely sure of my decision. What numbers do you want? This was the part I hadn't thought about. What numbers to choose? I had no experience in this. But then I remembered something my late husband used to say. Family is the most important thing we have, Elena. Everything else comes and goes, but family remains. My grandchildren's birthdays, I said without hesitation. I had 5 grandchildren. Ana, 7, Carlos, 12, Maria, 15, Jose, 19, and Fernando, 23. Their birth dates became my combination, 0712151923. Ricardo marked the numbers on the ticket and charged me 50 pesos. It was a small amount considering what was at stake, but for my retiree budget, it represented lunch money for 2 days. I carefully kept the ticket in my wallet and returned home with my market purchases. For the rest of the day, I almost forgot about the ticket. I prepared lunch, watched my favorite soap operas, called my daughter Maria to ask how she was, and in the afternoon, I sat on the porch to knit like I usually did. It wasn't until 7 at night that I remembered the drawing. The program was broadcast on the national channel every Tuesday at 8. I had never watched it before, but that night I turned on the television punctually. My heart was beating a little bit faster than normal, although I kept telling myself that I had no real chance of winning. The host was a young and charismatic man who spoke enthusiastically about the accumulated prize, 50 million pesos, a figure that continued to seem unreal to me. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for has arrived. Tonight's special drawing has a prize of 50 million pesos. Let's find out the winning numbers. The drum spun slowly while my hand trembled slightly, holding the ticket. The first number is 07. My heart skipped a beat. Ana's birthday, my youngest granddaughter. The second number is 12. Carlos's birthday. At that moment, something strange began to happen in my chest, a sensation I hadn't experienced in a long time. Was it possible? Could this really be happening? The third number is 15. Maria, my 15-year-old granddaughter. My hands began to tremble noticeably. 3 consecutive numbers. The odds of this were astronomically low. The fourth number is 19. Jose. Now I was standing in front of the television, with the ticket gripped in both hands, barely able to breathe. Only one number was missing, the last birthday, Fernando, my oldest grandson.
If this story has you on the edge of your seat like it had me when I lived it, share this video with your family and friends. Leave me a comment telling me if you've ever felt like destiny was playing with you. And if you want to know how this incredible story ends, subscribe, because what's coming in the next chapter will leave you speechless. Hit like if you want to know what happened with that last number. The host made a dramatic pause that seemed eternal to me. And the last number of tonight, 23. The ticket fell from my hands. Fernando, 23. My oldest grandson's birthday. I had won. Elena Vasquez, a 75-year-old retired woman who had never played the lottery in her life, had just won 50 million pesos. I remained paralyzed for several minutes, staring at the television where the host confirmed the numbers over and over again. 07, 12, 15, 19, 23. My 5 grandchildren's birthdays. The numbers I had chosen without thinking twice. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness, but of such overwhelming joy that my body didn't know how to process it. 50 million pesos. More money than I had dreamed of having in my entire life. But the first emotion I experienced wasn't selfishness or greed. It was love. Love for my family. I immediately thought of my children, my grandchildren, everything I could do for them. Carlos's debts with his medical studies, my daughter Anna's mortgage that had her worried, my son Roberto's dream of opening his own mechanic shop. With trembling hands, I looked for the phone and dialed my daughter Maria's number. "Mom, is everything okay? It's late for you to call." "Maria, my love, I need you to come home. Bring the boys. Bring everyone." "What happened, Mom? Are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." "I'm fine, daughter. Better than fine. Just come. I have something to tell you all." In less than an hour, my small living room was full. Maria arrived with her husband Pedro and their 2 children. Anna came with her family from the other side of the city. Roberto drove from his house with his wife Carmen and their teenage son. They all looked at me with concern, thinking that maybe I had some bad news to give them. Their faces reflected anxiety and affection at the same time. "Mom, you have us worried. What's so urgent?" asked Roberto, my oldest son. I took the lottery ticket from the table where I had left it and showed it to them. "This morning, I bought my first lottery ticket. I chose my 5 grandchildren's birthdays." "And?" Anna asked impatiently. "And I won!" The silence that followed was deafening. They all looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "Mom, you won what? A few hundred pesos?" asked Maria with a condescending smile. 50 million pesos. The expression on their faces changed instantly. Disbelief transformed into shock, then into confusion, and finally into an emotion they didn't know how to express. "Mom, that can't be true," whispered Roberto. I showed them the ticket again and turned on the television. Luckily, they were repeating the drawing results on the 9 o'clock news. When the numbers appeared on screen, 07, 12, 15, 19, 23, and everyone recognized Anna, Carlos, Maria, Jose, and Fernando's birthday dates, reality finally hit. My granddaughter Anna, only 7 years old, was the first to react. "Grandma won! Grandma won!" She shouted while running towards me to hug me. What followed was an explosion of emotions: tears, laughter, hugs, shouts of joy. My small living room became a spontaneous celebration where 3 generations of my family shared the most incredible news of our lives. Roberto lifted me from the sofa and spun me around as if I were a little girl. Maria cried while hugging me over and over again. Pedro, my son-in-law, repeated, "I can't believe it," while shaking his head. The grandchildren surrounded me all, asking me how it happened, what I was going to do with the money, if it was really true. For the next 2 hours, we planned everything. Roberto could finally open his mechanic shop. Maria could pay off her house mortgage and even buy a bigger one. Anna could send her children to a private university. The grandchildren could have everything they needed for their studies and their futures. But while I listened to my family make plans and dream about the possibilities, a small voice in my head reminded me of something important. I still had to claim the prize. The next day early, I dressed in my best clothes, a navy blue dress I had bought for Maria's wedding 3 years ago, and headed to the National Lottery offices in the center city. The building was imposing, with marble columns and enormous windows that reflected the morning sun. I had never been there before, but I had seen the place in newspaper photographs when others winners had claimed smaller prizes. Upon entering, I immediately noticed something strange. There were too many people. The waiting room, which I imagine would be a quiet place where occasionally a lucky winner appeared, was completely full. There were at least 50 people waiting, all with tickets in their hands, all with expressions of anxiety and excitement similar to mine. This wasn't normal. I approached the receptionist, a young woman with an obvious expression of stress on her face. "Good morning, I'm here to claim my lottery prize," I said politely. "Take a number and wait your turn," she replied without looking up, pointing to a number dispenser like those used in banks. I took number 247. The system showed they were serving number 201. Something definitely wasn't right. I sat in one of the few available chairs, next to a middle-aged man who was sweating nervously while holding his ticket. "Did you also win last night's drawing?" I asked him. "Yes, ma'am. 50 million. You too?" A chill ran down my spine. Yes, me too. I began to look around the room more carefully. All those people had tickets in their hands. all of them seemed to be there for the same reason as me. A terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. I got up and approached an older lady who was near the window. "Excuse me, could I ask you what numbers you had on your ticket?" She looked at me strangely, but answered, 07, 12, 15, 19, 23. Why? My heart sunk. I walked towards another person, a young man who couldn't be more than 20 years old. "Your numbers?"
7, 12, 15, 19, 23, and another 7, 12, 15, 19, 23. It was impossible, absolutely impossible. But as I talked to more and more people in that room, the horrible truth became evident. Everyone had exactly the same winning numbers. We had all won the same prize. We all had tickets with the combination 7, 12, 15, 19, 23. The realization hit me like a hammer. A catastrophic error had occurred in the lottery system. Somehow, thousands of tickets had been printed with the same winning combination. When my turn finally came, 3 hours later, the employee behind the counter confirmed my worst fears. "Ma'am, I regret to inform you that there was a technical error in the system. Approximately 3,000 tickets were printed with the winning combination. The prize must be divided among all valid ticket holders." "What exactly does that mean?" I asked, although I already feared the answer. "It means that instead of 50 million pesos, each winner will receive approximately 16,500 pesos, after taxes." The world stopped around me. 16,500 pesos, less than what my late husband earned in a month when he worked at the factory. An insignificant fraction of the 50 million I had believed I won. But I chose those numbers, my grandchildren's birthdays. "It can't be a coincidence," I stammered, knowing I sounded desperate. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. The error was in our printing system. We're investigating how it happened, but the reality is that thousands of people have identical tickets with those numbers." I left the lottery building in a state of total shock. My legs barely supported me as I walked slowly towards the bus stop. The ticket I had protected so carefully in my wallet for the last 24 hours now felt like a cruel mockery of fate. During the trip back home, I mentally relived the previous night. My family's joy, the plans we had made, the dreams we had built in those 2 magical hours when we believed all our financial problems had ended. How was I going to tell them that it had all been an illusion? How was I going to explain that the 50 million pesos had become 16,500? How was I going to face the devastation on their faces when they realized the miracle had been just a cruel technical error? When I got home, my phone was ringing. It was Maria. "Mom, did you go claim the prize? How was it? Are you officially a millionaire now?" The joy in her voice broke my heart. "Daughter, I need you to come home again. Bring the boys. Do you already have the check? Are we going to celebrate? Just come, please." That afternoon was one of the most difficult of my life. Gathering my family again and explaining what had happened was like taking a Christmas gift out of children's hands. Roberto remained quiet for a long time after I finished explaining the situation. Maria cried silently. Anna got angry and said the lottery should honor the original prize, regardless of the error. The grandchildren, who had spent the entire previous night fantasizing about the things they could buy, now looked at the floor with confusion and sadness. "So, how much money are you really going to receive, Mom?" 16,500 pesos. The figure sounded even smaller said out loud. That night, after my family went home with the weight of disappointment on their shoulders, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and reflected on the last 48 hours. I had experienced the greatest joy of my life, followed by the deepest disappointment. I had seen my family's dreams be born and die in the space of a day. I had tasted what it felt like to be rich for a few hours, only to return to being the same retiree with limited resources I had been all my life. But while I was sitting there, in the quietness of my small kitchen, something began to form in my mind. An idea.
crazy, risky, and completely out of character for a conservative old woman like me, but also, possibly, brilliant. If 3,000 people had received tickets with the same winning numbers, that meant there were 2,999 other people who were going through exactly the same disappointment as me. 2,999 people who probably would be willing to do anything to recover at least part of what they had lost. And at that moment, sitting in my kitchen at 11 p.m., I began to form a plan that would change not only my life, but the way everyone would see this lottery disaster. A plan that would require every peso of my savings, every favor I could ask for, and every ounce of courage I had in my 75-year-old body. A plan that, if it worked, would give me exactly what I had believed I won that first magical night. But that's a story that will have to wait until tomorrow, because what I was about to do was so bold, so unexpected, and completely impossible that when people found out, no one would be able to believe that a simple old woman like Elena Vasquez had been capable of something like that. The real adventure was just beginning.
That night, I couldn't sleep a single minute. My mind was working at 1,000 revolutions per minute, calculating, planning, reviewing every detail of the idea that had begun to form in my head. At 5 a.m, I was already completely dressed and with a handwritten list of everything I needed to do. But first, I needed information. I called the lottery offices as soon as they opened. "Good morning, this is Elena Vasquez. Yesterday, I was there about the error in the tickets. I need to know exactly how many people were affected." After being transferred 3 times, I finally spoke with a supervisor. "Mrs. Vasquez, there were exactly 3,027 tickets with the winning numbers. It's an unprecedented disaster. And how much will each person receive after taxes?" "Approximately 16,500 pesos per ticket." "Perfect." I did the calculations quickly. 3,027 people times 16,500 pesos equals 49,945,500 pesos. Almost exactly the original 50 million. But my plan wasn't simply to accept the 16,500 pesos. My plan was much more ambitious. At 9 a.m, I was standing outside the lottery building with a handmade sign that said, "Buying winning tickets, 25,000 pesos cash." The reaction was immediate. "Lady, are you crazy?" the first man who approached me asked. "Why would you pay 25,000 pesos for a ticket that's only worth 16,500? "Because I have my reasons," I replied with a mysterious smile. "Are you interested or not?" The man looked at his ticket, then looked at me, then looked at the sign again. "Do you have the money here?" I opened my bag and showed him a wad of bills. I had withdrawn all my life savings, exactly 847,000 pesos that I had accumulated during decades of work and obsessive saving. Cash immediately. The man couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This has to be a scam." "It's not a scam, it's business." 45 minutes later, I had bought my first winning ticket for 25,000 pesos. The news spread like wildfire. By noon, there was a line of at least 100 people waiting to sell me their tickets. Each one arrived skeptical, but when they saw real money changing hands, their attitude changed completely. "Why are you doing this?" each seller asked me. "Because I'm a crazy old woman with too much money," I replied. But the truth was much simpler and much more brilliant. I had calculated that most of the people affected by this error were desperate. They had tasted the honey of being millionaires for a day, and now they faced the reality of receiving only 16,500 pesos. Most of them had immediate debts. Others needed money from medical or family emergencies. Most would prefer to receive 25,000 pesos today than wait months for the official process to receive 16,500 pesos. It was basic psychology. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
But there was a problem. My 847,000 pesos would only allow me to buy approximately 34 tickets. I needed more capital. That's where my 75 years of life experience became invaluable. I called Roberto, my oldest son. Son, I need you to trust me like you never have before. Mom, after what happened yesterday, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I need you to lend me 200,000 pesos, everything you can get. 200,000 pesos? Mom, have you gone crazy? Possibly. But also possibly I'm about to recover those 50 million we lost yesterday. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, I don't understand anything that's happening. You don't need to understand it. You just need to trust me. Can you get the money or not? Roberto had been saving to open his mechanic shop. He had exactly 180,000 pesos in his savings account. If you lose this money, Mom, it will be the end of my shop dream. And if I don't lose it, you'll have enough money to open 10 shops. 2 hours later, Roberto arrived at the lottery building with the money. His face reflected a mixture of terror and curiosity. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Watch and learn. By 5 o'clock that first day, I had bought 47 winning tickets for a total of 1,175,000 pesos. But that was just the beginning. That night, I called my other 2 children. Maria, Ana, I need you to lend me all the money you can get. Mortgage your houses if necessary. Mom! They both shouted in unison over the phone. Listen to me carefully. In 3 days, I'm going to be a real millionaire, but I need your help to achieve it. I explained my plan to them. At first, they thought I had completely lost my mind, but when I showed them the 47 tickets I had already bought and explained the mathematics behind my strategy, they began to understand. If I could buy the majority of the 3,027 winning tickets for 25,000 pesos each, when it came time to claim the official prizes, I would own the majority of the winning tickets. And that would give me the majority of the total 50 million prize. It was risky. It was crazy. It required more money than my family had, but mathematically, it was perfect.
Maria managed to get 320,000 pesos by mortgaging her house. Ana gathered 280,000 pesos using her house as collateral and borrowing from friends. Roberto sold his car and asked for loans from all his contacts to gather another 150,000 pesos. In total, I had access to more than 2 million pesos. The second day, I bought 89 more tickets. The third day, news of what I was doing had reached the local media. A newspaper reporter approached to interview me. Mrs. Vasquez, can you explain exactly what you're trying to accomplish? I'm buying lottery tickets, I replied simply. But you're paying more than they're worth. According to whom? According to mathematics. Young man, I'm 75 years old. I've seen more real-life mathematics than you'll learn in your entire career. Trust me. By the end of the first week, I had bought 387 winning tickets. But that's when the problems began. People were starting to realize what I was doing. Prices began to rise. People who initially would have sold for 25,000 pesos now wanted 30,000. Then 35,000. Additionally, my resources were running out quickly. That's when I had to make the riskiest move of my entire life. I went to the bank where I had had my account for 40 years and requested an appointment with the manager. Don Carlos, I need a loan of 5 million pesos. The manager almost choked on his coffee. Mrs. Vasquez, you're retired. You don't have sufficient income to qualify for a loan of that magnitude. But I have collateral. I put a folder with 387 winning lottery tickets on his desk. Each of these tickets is officially worth 16,500 pesos. That's more than 6 million pesos in guaranteed value.
Don Carlos examined the tickets with disbelief. "Ma'am, this is completely unprecedented." Unprecedented, but legal and profitable. I explained my complete strategy to him. At first, he thought I was crazy, but when he did the calculations and realized that mathematically my plan was solid, his expression changed. "Do you really think you can buy the majority of the tickets?" "I don't think it. I know it." "And if it doesn't work?" "Then you keep 387 lottery tickets worth more than 6 million pesos. You can't lose." 3 days later, I had 5 million additional pesos in my account. With that capital, I could dramatically accelerate my purchases. I hired my 3 oldest grandchildren to help me. Carlos, Maria, and Jose positioned themselves in different parts of the city with signs offering 30,000 pesos per ticket. By the second week, I had bought more than 1,200 tickets. By the third week, I had 1,847 tickets. But then, something happened that I hadn't anticipated. Other investors realized what I was doing and began copying my strategy. A group of local businessmen began offering 35,000 pesos per ticket. Another group offered 40,000. A bidding war had begun, and I was at the center. That's when I played my final card. Instead of competing on price, I changed strategy completely. I organized a massive meeting at the local convention center and invited all the holders of winning tickets who hadn't sold yet. More than 800 people showed up. I got up on the podium with my 75 years and my navy blue dress and gave the speech of my life. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us were victims of the same cruel error. All of us believed for a moment that we were millionaires. All of us experienced the same devastation when we were told we would only receive crumbs. The audience was completely silent. Rich investors are now trying to take advantage of our pain by offering us a little more money for our tickets, but I propose something different. I made a dramatic pause. I propose that we join forces, that all the remaining tickets be sold to me, not for 35,000 or 40,000 pesos each, but for 45,000 pesos each. A murmur ran through the audience. But there's one condition. When I claim the total prize and become the official owner of those 50 million pesos, I'm going to do something that no other investor would do. Another pause. I'm going to donate 10 million to create a help fund for all the families who were affected by this error. A fund that will provide study scholarships, medical help, and economic assistance for emergencies. The audience exploded in applause. You can sell to the rich businessmen who are going to keep all the money, or you can sell to me, an old woman who understands what it's like to struggle economically and who promises to share the fortune with our community. The result was overwhelming. In the following 2 weeks, 1,180 more people sold me their tickets for 45,000 pesos each. In total, I ended up owning 3,027 winning tickets, each and every ticket that had been printed with the numbers 07, 12, 15, 19, and 23. On the official day to claim the prizes, I showed up at the lottery offices with a truck full of boxes containing all the tickets. The general manager of the National Lottery was waiting for me. "Mrs. Vasquez, I understand that you are now the owner of all the winning tickets from the special drawing." "That's correct." "Do you realize that this means you will receive the entirety of the 50 million peso prize?" "Yes, I realize that." The check was processed that same day. 50 million pesos, in the name of Elena Vasquez. But the story doesn't end there. I kept my promise. I donated 10 million to create the Elena Vasquez Community Help Fund, which to this day provides assistance to families in need. I gave 5 million to each of my 3 children so they could fulfill all their dreams. Roberto opened not 1, but 3 mechanic shops and now employs more than 20 people. Maria paid off her mortgage and bought the house of her dreams, plus established university accounts for all her children. Anna opened her own catering business and became one of the most successful businesswomen in the city. My 5 grandchildren now have their university education guaranteed and a trust fund that will take care of them their entire lives. And I, Elena Vasquez, at 75 years old, became the richest woman in my hometown. But more important than the money, I became something I never thought I would be: a legend. The story of how a retired old woman outsmarted professional investors and turned a lottery error into the greatest financial victory of her life became famous throughout the country. Journalists from national media came to interview me. Universities invited me to give talks on financial strategy. Writers wanted to document my story. But for me, the real victory wasn't the money. It was proving that it's never too late to be bold. That experience and wisdom can beat youth and capital. That an old woman with a plan can change the rules of the game. And that sometimes, when life gives you lemons, you can not just make lemonade, you can build a lemonade empire. Today, 5 years later, when people ask me what the secret of my success was, I always give them the same answer. Never underestimate an old woman with a plan, lots of patience, and the determination of a mother who wants to protect her family. Because at the end of the day, I didn't win those 50 million by luck. I won them because when everyone else saw a disaster, I saw an opportunity. When everyone else gave up, I fought. And when everyone else accepted the crumbs, I took the whole cake. That's the difference between being a victim of fate and being the architect of your own future. And that, dear friends, is the true moral of my story. Elena Vasquez smiles at the camera with her blue eyes sparkling with satisfaction and wisdom, while the golden afternoon sun illuminates her face. In her hands rests a photograph of her entire family gathered in the new house she was able to buy for family celebrations. A house where 3 generations meet every Sunday to remember the story of how Grandma Elena changed the destiny of the entire family with a plan as brilliant as it was unexpected. The end.